Second. Okay. Sabaah, thank you so much for speaking with me, and thank you for this documentary. You have you've woken so many people, you've introduced so many people who didn't know who XXXTentacion was before. And with this, it not only speaks to who a person is and their complexities, but mental illness and how it affects people. So my question to you is, when was the first time that you was introduced to XXXTentacion to the point where you was like, I want to follow him and what he's doing?
Well, I heard his music sort of in passing from SoundCloud, thought the music was good, knew that his name was making noise because I used to kind of, be on SoundCloud at that time. And then I heard about the allegations. And for me as a woman, it was impossible for me to be a fan after that point. And it was a shame because I would hear songs come out and I'd be like, oh, that song's really good, but there's allegations. And then when he passed, I sort of took note of the way that people were reacting. And I saw how polarized it was and how much pain there was across the board and everyone's different opinions of him. And that's what just kind of like left a little stain on my heart that felt like there's something more to be said about this. So when Fada reached out to me and Cleo and Solomon reached out to me about possibly directing this, I just felt like there was a deeper story and that I might be someone who could tell it. Yeah.
Speaking again, he is a very complex person. And so I was wondering, how was you able, one, you separate the artist from the person. You mentioned that also in the documentary. And also about his complexities, can you just walk us through how you wanted this to be a three-dimensional, because you create a three-dimensional story where you focus on what he's going through, the art and also the allegations?
Yeah, I really looked at this as a coming of age story, first and foremost, more so than a music documentary. Um, I felt like this was a young man who was trying to become an adult and trying to figure out what his identity was going to be as a full-blown human being, and he got cut short. And so that was really the trajectory I followed, really thinking about him as a person and weaving in the music and his musical trajectory to give people a sense of, okay, this is what you saw and this is what was happening behind the scenes.
So what I was interested also, the interviews that you were able to get, was there some people who refused because of the context?
No, that wasn't necessarily the experience.
Okay. So when you in there, when you first had this idea of I wanted to create this documentary, can you tell us whether or not it kind of differed from what the actual outcome was? Did you have to change course some of the times?
Well, being a documentary filmmaker, you kind of go in prepared to have a lot of uncertainty. So I knew that this was going to be an emotional roller coaster for everybody who was collaborating in the process. But I will say that I think that we stayed really true to our intentions and our principles. And, when we did have moments of difficulty, we talked through them, we worked through them together. And I think that what the ultimate product was is very, very aligned with the intentions that we had from the beginning.
Right. And also I was kind of the documentary itself, it focuses also on mental illness. And you did this, I'm going to assume the research before in order to fully understand what was going on. Was there something new, either information that you learned through what he was going through or the mental illness in general of how it impacted his life?
Yeah, well, one thing that I learned was that he was diagnosed as bipolar and he was diagnosed at two different points in his life. Once when he was 13 and once when he was probably 19. And I didn't realize the difference in the way that those things can present as in an adolescent versus an adult and how normal it is to have that be reassessed, how those things can change through adolescence. So ultimately he did get the same diagnosis twice, but it just left me with a lot to think about in terms of what does it mean for young people who their brains are still forming to be given a diagnosis like this, and then what types of situations, outlets, and resources are available My background is in mental health. I worked at an organization called the Mental Health Project, actually here in New York City, and I was an advocate for people who were coming out of jails or psychiatric hospitals and trying to connect with social services. So I had a firsthand look at what that system looks like, and I knew it to be one that is very flawed and very stretched thin. But you know, Jahseh's family was resourced from the beginning. He had a lot of options available to him, and unfortunately, still, you know, none of those options were enough. And I think that what that says is that our entire sort of structure around mental health, first of all, it needs to be separated from policing, and we need to have a resource that is really specifically around treatment and care rather than just punishment. And then there just needs to be more resources, more support, more awareness and visibility, more of a communal effort to find alternative pathways when someone does have a mental health diagnosis.
Now, you talked in the documentary that his music really made people feel seen. So I was wondering for you, what did his music do for you?
Well, I mean, it makes me feel seen too. You know, if there's any emotion that I have, there's an X song for it because he spanned the whole scope. He expressed everything. There's something really cathartic about the metal songs that you can just thrash and rage to. There's something really cathartic about the way that he, you know, crosses taboos and says outrageous things that you're not allowed to say. And then there are things that are really tender about being in love and what those feelings are like. And so I really resonate as a super emotional person who wears my heart on my sleeve. I think that if you can go in his catalog and you can find anything that you're looking for.
It's a question earlier in the documentary, we should separate the artist from the person. And so I was wondering, with this documentary and people going out and watching it, should we still be able to do that? Or should we kind of accept the person for who they are, including their music? Is it more than just one answer?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. I think it's many different answers. I think it's many different preferences. I think that there's no right way to go about all of this. And I think sometimes we get so focused on being right and being on the right side that we forget that these issues are completely messy and they're impossible to pin down. What I do believe, though, is that I don't think you can separate the art from the artist, especially when you're dealing with a great artist, because the great artist is a person that is expressing their humanity in a creative way, and those things are intrinsically tied together. And when you listen to the music, a huge percent of the music is about Geneva, is about those situations. So I think that in this case, there really is no separating the art from the artist. This is a human being who poured his everything and I think his best self into his art. And we're fortunate to be able to look at his life, to draw the lessons from it, and to be able to appreciate the music if we so choose. And if we choose not to, that's okay.
Now, the family was involved. They did interviews and sat for this documentary. Did they say anything or respond to after it came out? I know it was aired in several film festivals.
Yeah, so Cleo, his mom, is an executive producer. His manager is also an executive producer. They were part of the team that hired me. They saw cuts of the film throughout the process, and we negotiated what it was going to be. So the level of honesty that you see in the film was achieved with the consent and the participation of his family. And that was really important to me. I didn't think it was necessary to go in and do like a gotcha thing where I dig everything up and I expose it. I felt like we could walk together to tell the truth about him so that people could see and possibly believe that he was striving to be a better person. I think that audiences are really smart. And when you hold back the truth, they know it and they don't trust the material. So my argument was, if you want people to believe that he was changing, you have to be honest about what he was changing from. And they understood that and they were courageous enough to do that with me.
Now, it really felt like a love letter also to fans. I was wondering, this could also give them that final closure, also for fans and, you know, for family members as well. What do you hope the impact or the message ends up being to those fans, because they were connected so much to his music?
I hope that they see through the villain performance and the tough guy aspects of him. And I hope that they see that what was most important about him, what brought people around him, what gave his music its power, was actually his compassion and his commitment to trying to be better, and the love that he had that he wanted to express, that sometimes he was unable to, and sometimes it came out in the worst possible ways, but that he was reaching for a better version of himself. That's why he's who he is. That's why he's an icon. That's why we can't forget him and can't let him go. And I hope that as the people who grew up with him get older and reckon with who they want to be in the world, I hope that they latch on to that positive example.
Any kind of footage or other person that probably didn't make the final cut that you wasn't able to put in there?
Yeah, one person is Denzel Curry. He was an underground rapper, a really good friend of X's, and I knew that he had made a tremendous impact on X's life, so I made sure to mention him in the film, but it was just a matter of not having the time and the space to do it because of deadlines. So that's one person that I really wished would have been able to be in the film. And even more friends, more family. Like, I could have interviewed so many people. He touched so many lives. I mean, directly touched so many people. He was so compassionate, so giving. He had this side of him that his heart just went out to everybody. So there were so many people that could have a story about him. And yeah, like I said, this could have been a 5-part series if we had, the capacity. So yeah.
Surprised me at the end was the ending between the mother and the girlfriend who was abused. Do you still keep in touch? Do you know if there's an up either with their relationship?
Yeah. So we were together in Miami. We were all together at the screening. The relationship is very positive, very supportive. They're brought together by the fact that they both loved Jahseh. They both struggled in the consequences of his actions, obviously Geneva in a very visceral way. And they both wanted for the world to know that he was bigger than his darkest moment.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for speaking with me. I truly enjoyed it, and I love the documentary.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No problem.